Welcome to SpaceDoc. I'm your SpaceDoc, Dr. James, here to share my passion for space, spaceships, and the Star Trek universe. And today we're looking at the 4th issue from the Star Trek Starships collection from Fanhome. This one is, of course, the USS Enterprise NCC 1701F from the 3rd season of Star Trek Picard. I just received the ship in the mail this week, and I'm pretty excited because this is the first XL edition from the new Fanhome collection. So it's quite a bit larger. We'll see exactly how large it is compared to some other ships in the line. But as per usual, it has a nice lovely box art with images of the ship on multiple sides of the box. So that makes it, hopefully makes it nice if it's sitting on a shelf. I actually particularly like this side profile ship here. Since I talked about it last time, I feel obliged to talk about the shipping for the ship. So Fanhome has had some mixed reviews with regards to its shipping. I actually received this one not too long after I got the email that it was being shipped, but as they all have been, it took probably a week longer than the original email said it would take. And I want to be clear, the way that the shipping works in the United States is, first, you get an email notification that it's going to some other third-party shipping system, maybe tied to their warehouse, and then it gets delivered to the post office, to the USPS. And it's that first step of getting it out of the warehouse that takes forever. Once it gets into the hands of USPS, it's really quick, which I guess is this is an opportunity for me to plug the USPS. Post office is great. For those of you in the United States, I hope you are paying attention to potential reorganization of the USPS, which I think is not a good thing. So just pay attention to those things if you care about, say, delivery of packages in the United States. With that said, let's open her up and have a look at the Enterprise F. So the first thing in here is the magazine. So we'll have a look at the magazine here in a little bit. She certainly is big. Why don't I take out the stand in the ship, set the stand aside, and focus on the ship. So here is the Enterprise F. This model is quite large. I'm actually pretty pleased with the size of this. One of the things with the Eagle Moss and now Fanhome models is you're never really certain how big they were going to be and if the larger size really warranted it, whether you got more detail by bringing it up to a larger size. And my first impression of this ship is, wow, there is a lot of detail on this. So I'm pretty excited, looking forward to going through it. Before we get into the detail, I probably should mention, so the Enterprise F was introduced as a fan design for Star Trek Online. I never really got into Star Trek Online. I think I played the tutorial level, but it never was really my type of game, which is fine. Not every game is for everyone. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Star Trek games. I wish there were more of them. I'd love to have a new modern Star Trek Armada or Elite Force. But I'm so happy that Star Trek Online continues to go. And it's also exciting to see Star Trek Online be really incorporated into some of the modern shows. So, for example, the Enterprise F model, I'm pretty certain that they took the model as developed from Star Trek Online. Probably made a few tweaks, but this and many other ships were pulled from Star Trek Online for Star Trek Picard, which is great. So why don't we have a look at her and really get up close. So as per usual, we'll start at the top of the ship in the front and work our way downwards and aft. And yeah, the first impression is just, wow, there's a lot of detail. And since I didn't really get into Star Trek Online, where I know the ship was pretty prominent, I don't have a really good sort of basis for what the ship should look like, or the details that should or should not be there. My really only familiarity is from the season 3 of Star Trek Picard, where the ship shows up for a little bit, and it doesn't get that much screen time on there. So forgive me if I don't identify every little detail or inaccuracy compared to the Star Trek Online version. So I'll mostly just be looking at this as sort of a exciting Star Trek ship. So first things first, let's actually start at the bridge. Very interesting bridge shape. Lots of molded detail in there. Windows running around the side, probably a deck or two lower. Some lovely escape pods on either side. There's a little bit of light blue maybe on the dome of the bridge. So that looks really nice. There's just a lot of nice printed detail on here. Lots of windows, which is really good. Let's move forward to the registry. So it has a lovely blue United Federation of Planets insignia there above in black, the USS Enterprise. The registry, NCC 1701F, is in a nice dark gray with some red outlining to it. Looks pretty nice and crisp. In front of the registry is a phaser array and some transporter emitters. They're in yellow, which look really nice. Transporter emitters, at least up here, don't really have a grill-like texture that many transporter emitters on different ships tend to have. In fact, if I jump back to some transporter emitters further back on the ship, you can see some of them actually do have that texture, just not this forward array. The ship has this nice, like, forward, I don't know what you would call this like dark gray lip around the front of the saucer that also like wraps onto the bottom of the saucer. It's a nice detail there to sort of break up the coloring of the ship, which is probably a good time to actually talk about it. The ship is a very light gray, maybe a little bit of a warm gray, with a lot of dark gray accenting around. There's no Aztecing or paneling done in the paint. There's very clearly panel lines in the molded version of the ship. This top here feels, I think that's metal. Yeah, and the bottom is plastic. So let's continue on. There are a lot of escape pods molded in. Don't see really any paint detail on the escape pods, but given their small size, I think that's totally forgivable. The molding really makes it clear that they're there. The windows themselves actually don't appear to be molded. They look like they're just painted on, with sort of a light blue paint for a lit window and a dark black or gray for a dim window. So no dreaded window paint and molding misalignment, although we'll note that there's maybe here where some painted window kind of falls on the edge of a panel line, which makes me think that maybe there is a slight misalignment, but I'm really nitpicking on that. I think for a model of this scale, putting molded in windows for all of these would have just been too much, and since they're so tiny and you can see them compared to the size of my finger, I think that's totally reasonable not to give them molding. The saucer for the Enterprise F is an interesting shape. There's a lot of interesting like swooped bevels in it at different levels. It breaks up what could otherwise be sort of a simple teardrop shaped saucer. So that's a nice detail. There's another set of phaser arrays running along the side of the saucer here. There's a couple inlaid windows here and here. Those windows, I don't really see painted indicators that there's windows there. Same with this forward version here. There's some light blue windows sort of atop of it, but not really matched up with that. I don't know what you would call this indent on the side of the ship. Same thing on the other side. But again, there's just so many windows and so much molded detail. And I don't even know for certain that those are windows. I just kind of assume that they are based on analogy to other ships. So you have this nice dark gray, very Enterprise E styling for the painting on the ship. Lots of black and white lines. So actually you can see in here there's both molded detail, but it's also a paint difference. Like there's a more light gray infilling of the indent there, as well as some black lines. So that's a nice level of detail. Nice red pinstripe on the top of the ship with the delta. Lots of escape pods on either side. Again, no painted detail on them. Some presumably warp crystals or warp field governors or impulse engine manifolds or something here. These four sort of circular structures on either side of the neck of the ship. They have a little bit of blue paint in there, which is nice. There's some navigation lights there on top, a red light, a green light over here for the starboard side, and then a red light for port over here. There are some RCS thrusters, or reaction control system thrusters. Shown here is just these sort of yellow blocks on the edge of the saucer with a little bit of painted detail, just sort of two black rectangles, both on the front and back of the saucer. Let's have a look at the back of the saucer. There's a lot of detail back here. So there's presumably a main shuttle bay, some nice dark gray with some grill texture on it. These sort of shuttle bay landing indicators or landing strips in red and yellow, looking very much like, actually like Voyager's landing strips. There's even a very tiny little registry there, NCC 1701F, which looks nice. That's very fine printing. Looks like there's a row of windows, white printed windows above the shuttle bay, where my thumb is pointing. Back here, there looks to be what I would assume to be impulse engines. That's typically where they are on things like the Enterprise E. No red or orange painting indicating the actual impulse engines in there, let alone any sort of different plastic. They often will stick a little bit of red or orange plastic for impulse engines, and I don't see that there. I'll have to look at the magazine to confirm that that's actually an error. Would have been nice. Probably wouldn't be too hard to go in and mod that just with a little bit of paint, but given the price point, you really shouldn't have to do anything like that for these models. So, yeah. So why don't we flip her over and look at the bottom of the saucer before moving to the secondary hull. So again, lots of nice detail down here. This is now the plastic side. You can kind of tell there's a little bit of sheen difference between the plastic and the metal. At least I can convince myself of that. Maybe I'm delusional. It's a bit more matte. But being very, very nitpicky. So you have a lovely registry up here, NCC 1701F. Again, some grill-less transporter emitters, presumably. More escape pods molded in. The thruster quads extend around the bottom of the saucer. There are some phaser ships on either side of the saucer. These are again molded, painted in a dark gray. I do appreciate, again, the sort of swoopiness of some of the structure on the ship. It's just an interesting and almost organic or like aerodynamic feeling shift in the design of the saucer, because otherwise they can just become pretty simple. This has a lot of interesting curves included on it. There's a central, presumably, sensor dome on the bottom of the saucer. It's quite large. Don't know if that's a captain's yacht or just greebles on the bottom. It looks like there's something else down there in this dark gray. Here, I wonder if those are also transporter emitters, and this time that's just yellow paint. It's not even a molded detail. I wonder what those are. Lots of windows again. Some some inlay here, which presumably windows, although there's no windows actually matched up to that sort of indent in the hull. Presumably that's also the case up here, where the painted windows are basically at the edge of that indent rather than inside the indent. But I think that's really not noticeable. There's not much detail back in sort of between the saucer and the secondary hull, which may be true to the show or to the ship. I don't know for certain. So let's jump to the secondary hull via the neck. So this ship, the Enterprise F Odyssey class, is interesting for having sort of a dual neck configuration. You can actually see down through here. Maybe it's easier this way. You can kind of see my finger through there. There are sort of two necks on either side connecting into the hull in a very organic looking way. They blend nicely into the primary hull. I think it looks pretty good. The necks have a lot of windows on them. Again, black and blue paint, no molded windows it seems. Lots of panel lines are molded, which is nice. Some greebly details sort of here and here. I mean, this kind of feels almost Intrepid class with that sort of, maybe it's a lateral sensor array or something. A nice red delta and pinstriping with the registry NCC 1701F clearly visible, which again, that's very tiny printing there. So that looks great. The secondary hull has a lot of this darker gray, sort of a warm gray tone. Once you get into the dark gray, there's not really many windows. In fact, there's a handful sort of at the edge of it up here. You still have escape pods, and actually the escape pods down here appear to be painted. Maybe it's just the same light gray as the rest of the hull, but that's a nice detail to make these feel like they are part of the same set of escape pods you see elsewhere. Presumably this little protrusion is a warp core or warp projection system, though I'm speculating. The deflector dish is nice. It's actually sort of a metallic coppery color. It really plays well in the light. There's a little bit of like purple in two regions on the center of it. There's not a lot of like blue or red. or some of the more vibrant lit up colors that you sometimes see on starships. And to be honest, without the light, with most ships, the red or the blue actually comes from the lighting, not the actual paint or metal of that location on the ship. So they actually are, like if you look at the Voyager, or even the Enterprise D, they have these sort of metallic coppery deflector dishes that might be illuminated red or blue by lights behind the dish. And so, I'm sure people will complain about the deflector. It is just molded. There's no change in plastic or anything, but I like it. I like that coppery color. It's very clear what it is. Again, there are some transporter emitters. These also don't have any grill on them. Some indents there, just sort of below the deflector dish. I wonder if those are torpedo launchers. So you move aft. Again, lots of similar, very nice detail. Again, some transporter emitters. This time they have a grill, but they're like really wide grills. This is just an interesting inconsistency across the same model. Like in this same view, you can see ones that have a grill, ones that don't, ones that are just painted on. It's just, I'm just kind of surprised that it's different across the model. But again, trivial. The back of the Enterprise F has this indented docking port. I don't know much about the ship, but I do know that is a secondary craft that can sort of undock and redock onto the back of the ship. Obviously, it does not detach from this model here, but it's molded in there. There's some RCS thrusters on the aft of the ship as well. Same texturing as on the saucer. So now let's jump to the nacelles. So you have these sort of angry looking fronts of the nacelles. There's a nice red plastic, sort of a dark red there, or what is presumably the Picard collectors on the front of the nacelles. So that looks great. Some dark gray painting on top and on the sides, some lovely grille texture here. Again, feels very Enterprise E, at least hints of Enterprise E. The shape is very different, but you can see an evolution. There's a transparent blue inset here for much of the warp nacelle. Some nice grille texture on it, so that looks really great. Comes down to a point. There's a red delta on the side, and then if you go to the way back here, there's actually very tiny printing for USS Enterprise NCC 1701F on the back of the nacelles, along with another RCS engine and some navigation lights, green and red for starboard and port, respectively. So the all-important question: are the nacelles straight? You know what? Trying to align it in camera to my eye. These look really nice. No obvious drooping or misalignment of one nacelle or the other. They look very parallel. That's probably the thing that I know a lot of people get worked up about windows and painting details, but the thing that annoys me the most is when nacelles are misaligned, because that's something you can see from far away, and it bugs me. I have a couple ships from the Eagle Moss days that I've been unable to pop off a nacelle and realign it, and they still bug me to this day. Thankfully, I won't have to do this with the Enterprise F. And for those of you who are curious, I have not tried to break off the warp nacelle from the Farragut, which also suffers from misalignment. Been a little too nervous to do that for that ship, but hopefully Fanhome can keep up the work with set forth by this ship. One thing that I do know about the Enterprise F and the Odyssey class is that I believe it's supposed to have impulse engines sort of in the nacelle pylon, sort of in this indent down here. I don't see any painted red or orange texture down there. So, you know, that's probably the only like obvious thing that could be improved with this model is there's no impulse engines. Presumably the ship has them and they just weren't captured in this model, and that's a shame. So I keep holding this and keep looking at it because, again, I'm not terribly familiar with the Odyssey class Enterprise, and this is a really nice model. I really appreciate the detail that they put into a ship of this size. It looks really nice. Taking a step back and like thinking about this ship as a whole, it's a very interesting design ship. In some ways, it feels very much like it belongs in the Star Trek universe, and in other ways, I definitely believe the fan design origin. I know it's been reworked a lot for Star Trek Online, but I think this looks good. I'm glad to have it in my collection. I think the highlights really are the size and the amount of detail in here. And I'm always a sucker for this sort of Star Trek First Contact style paint scheme where you have a very light color primary hull with a lot of dark grays or even blacks accenting the ship. It makes it really pop in a way that I like. So now that we've had a good look at her, and I could probably keep looking at her, probably will keep looking at her, but why don't we pull out the stand and see how she looks on the stand. So here's the usual stand. Again, very much the Eagle Moss stand, just without the sticker on the bottom. And then a large transparent clip. Just pops in and feels nice and stable. So let's see how the ship clips on. So to help frame the shot, we'll bring out this little box, which we'll talk about the contents of which in a little second. But here we go. So, okay, so it sort of clips on onto the saucer, as one might expect. The clip sort of goes on either side of the neck, on the top and bottom of the saucer. Does not feel particularly tight. Doesn't like click in. So could be better. I prefer when the stands are a lot more solid, and I'm less worried about me knocking it out of the stand. I guess if I gave it a it's not gonna like fall out immediately like say the XL Voyager is my classic example of a ship with a very poorly designed stand. That ship is very front heavy and the stand does not keep it in place, so it very quickly tips out. The XL Reliant was another case from Eagle Moss. So this at least has enough of an upward rake that it doesn't want to tip immediately out. The mast is far enough back that it's decently secure, and these clips are particularly long. So it could be better, but it's probably sufficient. So why don't I put the ship aside and we'll have a quick look at the magazine. So here is the magazine. Same size, I believe, as the other ones, actually. I wonder if I did that or if it's shipped that way. There's a little bit of a crease in it. I can live with that. But, okay. USS Enterprise NCC 1701F, issue number 4. And as you may know, I believe every 4th issue is an XL edition. So inside it has some basic instructions on how to mount the ship on the stand, and then some basic details of the ship in this forward plan view. So length 1,000 meters, 1,061 meters, so over a kilometer long. Acting Captain Admiral Shelby. So Shelby was in one of the surprise cameos in Star Trek Picard Season 3 towards the end. She got done dirty, in my opinion. But I guess I'm happy that we got to see her, even though I wish she had more to do and wasn't... yeah, I'll leave it at that. I won't talk too much about it. Operating phasers, photon torpedoes, decommissioned in 2401. That's a lovely view of the ship. Some nice 3D renders. I'm not going to go through every paragraph on this, but needless to say, there's a lot of description about the ship in universe, how it came to be, and its fate. Here are some lovely plan views of the ship, and again, my usual comment: these are wonderful, but please annotate them. I want to see what every little bit and bob is on the ship, and I know that they think through this. So that's something that I would really love if they started doing for future magazines. One thing to note, you can see it down here. This is an aft view of the ship. You can definitely see red impulse engines on the saucer and also even on the nacelle pylons. So that is something that's absent in the actual model. Confirming it, at least. Here's a lovely section, again, another beautiful view about the designing of the ship. So it notes here that it was of course designed for Star Trek Online, and they eventually brought it in for Star Trek Picard. So I suspect that this will tell that story. It's becoming a running trend in these magazines. The moment I turn the page to concept art, I get excited. So here are some sketches of the from the original designer of the Enterprise F, showing their thought process and how it eventually became the winning submission. Just like the Titan, there was a competition to design the show. There was a competition to design the ship. Sorry, and so it was a fan design that became real, which is always interesting. And then, of course, it went through a lot of work once they brought it into Star Trek Online and eventually to Picard to make it consistent and updated for those games and that show. So here's, again, even more concept art. So this is nice. So you can see it sort of transitioning from the original fan art into something that's actually buildable in a video game. So that's cool. So here again, more lovely graphics showing the evolution of the ship over time to become the ship that we see on Picard. So I look forward to reading that. Well, that's the last page of the magazine. Okay, so now that we've gotten through the magazine, let's actually have a look at the other things that came with this issue from Fanhome. So, as a subscriber, you get bonus gifts every once in a while from Fanhome, and this issue shipped with 2 of them. One of these was supposed to come with the previous ship, the USS Farragut, but they were unavailable, not ready to ship it at the time, so I got these 2 things with the Enterprise F. And so let's actually have a look. So the first item is a mug. So here we go. This was one of the first subscriber gifts. This is a metal mug, coffee mug. Pretty decent size, not too thin of a wall. But of course, the reason it comes with the Star Trek collection is it's got some Star Trek references printed on the side. Actually, this almost looks like a sticker, although it's not one that I can peel off. A Ractagino logo. So it says 100% Colombian Ractagino. Of course, as others have noted, Colombia, if it means the country of Colombia in South America, that is misspelled. It should be Colombia. Columbia with a U is, it's still a word. For example, the Space Shuttle Columbia, it's just not really appropriate for espresso or coffee, assuming that Ractagino uses coffee, and assuming that this is Colombia. Who knows? We can create a fan theory that this is somehow different. So it says here on this print, grown on the green hills of Earth. Imported by Harcourt Fenton Mud. Okay, that's unexpected. So Harry Mudd himself imported this mug. So that's goofy. Okay, so I mean, I guess I can't complain too much about a free gift. It's not outstanding. It's a sticker on a mug. And the sticker is only vaguely Star Trek adjacent. I don't know the meaning of the shape or the stars or anything on here. But okay. Thanks. I wouldn't mind something different in the future. And I don't think this is something to go completely out of your way to get, but okay. And to open this one off screen, the second item is this. So this is, it's a very heavy acrylic frame that holds an LCARS cross-section of the USS Titan A in particular. I think actually, so it's held together by magnets. You can see the magnets in the corner. Actually, I can open it, and I bet, I wonder if there's, you know, there might be it's really hard to see the cross section through this, and I'm wondering if there's a I can feel like a little stickery. Oh my god. Oh, here we go. So there's a sticker material on one side. Is there one on the other side too? Because it's pretty, like, you can see like scratching and stuff, and I wonder what. Is there another layer of plastic that I have to peel off? Yeah, I think there is. Sorry, this is seeing me problem solve in real time. See, yep, there it goes. Okay. Yep, and the scratches are going away. So here is the print. This is okay. So I wasn't too enthused with the mug. I think I'm even less enthused with this. And the reason is that this is heavy. And all that this is a frame. And it's actually frame sized for probably a 4x6 inch photo. It's not bespokely designed for this. This is the thing you're actually, as a Star Trek fan, the thing you actually care about. And this is basically, if I can get it to focus, it's almost like a piece of film or like an old slide. It's a piece of transparent plastic. There's actually almost no text on it. The decks on this blueprint, I mean, there are decks, but there's no like things in there. So it feels like, actually, I'm holding it backwards. I wonder if there's even enough film on this, because it's not particularly like, there's not a lot of detail. It's so I would love these like acoudigrams. I mean, I'm a big fan of all the technical details. I'm a big fan of all the work that goes into designing ships, particularly by the production teams, the people like Dave Blass, like Mike and Denise Okuda, who are the namesake for these sorts of diagrams, these acoudigrams. But there's almost nothing here. So you can see there's decks, there's turbolifts, nothing is labeled. See the USS Titan. You see a couple keywords, but not much detail. This just feels cheap. And definitely not worth. I mean, I wouldn't pay money for this. I wouldn't pay more than a couple bucks for this. It really feels like they spent all their money on a big chunky frame. They printed something that is not the right size for this frame. It would be slightly different if it was like sized the right way, but I'm not gonna set this up on my desk or anything like this. It's a waste of space. So honestly, these subscriber gifts, they feel cheap and not really worth it, which is a shame. I know that some of the subscriber gifts coming up will be more interesting, things like dedication plaques, and even eventually there's going to be another ship that comes as a subscriber gift, but this is a little bit of a letdown. So as a point of comparison for this, I actually went back into my Star Trek collection and pulled out one of these guys. So one of the things that came with the Eagle Moss shuttle collections, which were smaller models, they came with magazines, but they also came with this, like, again, somewhat transparent acoudigram for the ship. In this case, I happened to grab Captain Picard's yacht from the Enterprise D, the Cousteau. So it's very similar. Again, it's a plastic, somewhat transparent. This has more detail on it, though. So I never was like a huge fan of these things. I love the acoudigrams. I love the production design. I love the in-universe explanations for things. But this just always felt like something that I would get, I would look at. Most of the time I didn't unwrap them. I just put them in a drawer somewhere. I'd rather have them in, for example, the magazines. I think these I take better care of. So, but even this, I mean, they didn't ship it in a frame. It's a rounded, cornered piece of film. This just feels like the same, but even cheaper. It's basically a bookmark. And yeah, not worth it in my opinion. In fact, I'll probably end up use this frame for something else. I'll probably stick a 4x6 photo of something else in it and just use it in my house for something else. not Star Trek related. Oh well. Before we end, I actually realized that we need to compare this ship to some other ships in the line to get a sense of scale. And so the first thing that I thought would be good to compare it to is just the USS Titan. So this was issue 1 of the Fanhome Star Trek Starships collection. And this was, I suspect, will be the entry model for most people. Actually, as I hold it up in front of camera, you can kind of see that they're not terribly too far off in terms of physical size. The Titan is, of course, a much smaller ship than the Enterprise F. But I'm showing them here really to give you a sense of scale for the models themselves. So the Enterprise F is a good deal longer, maybe an extra 3 or 4 inches, probably 3 inches. It feels more substantive though. I'm actually kind of surprised. The Enterprise, the Titan, or the Enterprise G, spoilers, looks and feels comparable in size to the Enterprise F in my hands, but mostly in the camera. But this ship just feels so much beefier. It feels heavier. It uses more metal, I believe. It has a lot more detail in it than the Titan. So it really does feel like an upgrade compared to the ship, at least in terms of the physical thing I'm holding in front of you. Not really commenting about the lineage of the Enterprise going from E to F to G. Presumably we'll talk about that again, because one of the XLs that will eventually come is the USS Titan, or sorry, the Enterprise G. So we'll be getting a slightly larger version of this ship in the future. And it's probably not going to be that much bigger, because usually the XLs come in at sort of the same size. They have to fit in roughly the same box. So we'll talk about that when we eventually get to the Enterprise G. So compared to the Fanhome models, this is bigger. It's not dramatically bigger, but there's something about this ship, about the Enterprise F, that just feels more impressive in my hand. This might be, between this and the Stargazer, these might be my favorites of the collection so far. And I think it just gets down to the detail and the aesthetics of the ship itself. There are really not that many flaws in this model. Yes, it lacks impulse engines. That's probably the biggest flaw, but it looks good otherwise. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention and show this is actually not the first time that the Enterprise F has come into my collection. Eagle Moss did an Enterprise F way back in the day at their sort of regular size scale. So this is, you can see by comparison, this is maybe the Eagle Moss version is maybe the length of the saucer of the Fanhome version. This is much smaller. It feels smaller. But I did collect this back in the day when it came out. And then later, I actually was able to snag a different library version of the same ship. So this was, it's the same model, just in a different paint scheme. And Eagle Moss went on and made a third version that I don't have, the refit version, I believe. But the moral of the story is that they've made a few of these in the past, and I thought it'd be good to do a little comparison. And just based on the paint scheme alone, I'm going to focus on this version, which is my favorite of the two different versions that I have, and it's really just because I'm a sucker for that first contact paint scheme, as I mentioned before. But let's just have a quick little comparison between these two ships. So obviously the Fanhome model is gigantic compared to this. Not all the paint is identical. They presumably changed some things between the Star Trek Online version and what they showed on Picard. So for example, there's two United Federation of Planet logos on the smaller version, only one here. The Fanhome model is this sort of light but warm gray tone, whereas the small Eagle Moss model here is very much just white. I actually like the higher contrast on the Eagle Moss model a little bit more. But this is a tiny model. It has a lot of detail, but nowhere in comparison to what they could do on the XL Fanhome model. Even on this little tiny model, they didn't paint those main impulse engines on the saucer, although they did put some red down there on the nacelle pylons, suggestive of the impulse engines, although it's very tiny and the red is maybe not quite in the right position or printed perfectly, but they got a smaller bit of detail there. This model doesn't have transparent plastic in the nacelles. The nacelle details are all just painted on, which is not surprising given the tiny scale here. The deflector has blue paint in it, probably again because they're trying to capture that sort of lighting, but it still has that copper. I think there's a lot of structural differences on the bottom of the saucers of these two ships. Yeah, so there's actually notable differences here where that sensor dome is much closer to the deflector on the small model than on the larger model. So pretty good evidence that they went through a lot of redesigning of this ship, either online over the course of Star Trek Online or in the transition to Star Trek Picard. They redid it, probably added details in order to make it consistent with a show that's shown in modern resolution. So, well, the gray one as well. The gray one is actually much closer in color to the Fanhome model. There, that one actually did get painted impulse engines on the saucer. So at least one of them did it. No copper on the deflector dish for this one, just some different shades of blue. So, all in all, I have a whole suite of Enterprise Fs here. They all look nice. I mean, the Fanhome one is just so impressive because of its size and the amount of detail here, but I wouldn't put it past anyone for just collecting the smaller version. Particularly if you like that livery more, or you're just adding it to have a representative of the Enterprise F. You don't really care that much about the detail or the price. This one is, I mean, they don't make these anymore, so I'm sure on eBay the price of these has gone way up. But at least when they were producing this was probably in the $20 to $30 price range, where this is substantially more expensive. That concludes our look today at the Fanhome XL version of the USS Enterprise NCC 1701F from Star Trek Picard Season 3 and Star Trek Online. All in all, this was a great ship. There's so much detail. I'm probably going to need to look at this and digest it over a couple days. I bet this will look really nice on the shelf compared to the variety of other XLs that I already have from Eagle Moss and the Fanhome models, which are not terribly far off the XL scale anyway. So, I think this was a very nice addition to the fleet. I'm pretty happy with her. The only negative comments are really the lack of impulse engines, which don't bug me too much. But I will say, the subscriber gifts, those disappoint me. So the mug and the cross-section of the ship, the Akutogram, those feel cheap. And I would hope that future subscriber gifts are better, just better quality. I could live with a nice Akutogram. I could live with a nice mug, but these feel very discounty. And I'm definitely not going to be subscribing just for the sake of those things. I feel like people are subscribing for the ships, and I know that there's challenges getting the ships individually right now, so that's really the main reason to subscribe. Is you want these ships, you want them as soon as they come out. That's the primary way to do it. So with that, we'll wrap it up here for SpaceDoc. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this ship and how it compares to what you know of the Enterprise F, particularly if you play Star Trek Online. I would love to know if people think this is a fair representation of that ship, just because I don't have experience in that realm. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if there's anything I could be doing better or different. Otherwise, live long and prosper.